Hello everyone. For my spatial studies project, I did the Hidden Gems of Florida, some local or well not known tourist spots of Florida. I feel like when most people come down to Florida, they go to the beaches or Orlando for the theme parks and not to these locations, which definitely deserve some credit. So let's get right into it. So I created this map um, with five blue points to signify like which location all these places are in. So if you needed to like fly or drive, you know kind of where you need to head for these certain items. And they all fit into a theme. And then all these orange dots are the actual places in the map, and you can zoom in on here to see them all. I also included major roads as well as state park trails. Major roads for allowing to see if you want to drive and to see how to get to those places, and then state park trails because a lot of them fall around these little state park trails, and I thought that was good to add if somebody wanted to actually go into the state parks. So I had that. So let's get right into first stop, Orlando. So Orlando obviously is known for all of its major theme parks. I think there's over eight, four from Disney and three from Orlando, and there's more water parks and different parks all around. So it's crazy packed, and there's a lot to do. I feel like you would have to spend at least like 3 weeks to go there to hit everything. So I wanted to highlight the three theme parks that I love to go to. That aren't really well known, and two of them are actually from SeaWorld. So first is Aquatica, a water park in Discovery Cove. Now Aquatica, I feel like gets the newest water rides around, and it's known to get that. They have like they definitely sorry, excuse me, they they definitely almost have a little less safety measures, like with their lazy river. You don't have to wear a life jacket, and it's kind of more thrilling. And since it's more of a low-key park, not really well known, they're able to get away with a little bit more. And every time I've been, it's been dead. And it sucks to be at a water park when you're sweating, you can't get on the rides. So this is definitely, if you're in for a water park around Orlando, I would highly recommend Aquatica. Next would be Discovery Cove, and this is kind of a different theme park experience altogether. You swim and like play with animals or marine life animals. So they have this ginormous fish tank full of all these different tropical fish that you could swim in. The water is freezing because I have to keep it for the fish, but you can swim within all these different marine life stingrays, everything, and pet them, and it's crazy. And then you could also have a dolphin experience. It's more of like a getaway and experience rather than like a theme park as you would know it with roller coasters and thrills. It's definitely, I've done this a couple times, and it's very, very, very a great experience. So moving on to the north of SeaWorld, we have Fun Spot. Now, driving by Fun Spot, you wouldn't really be too like, I want to go there. Kind of looks like a state fair or carnival. But they have some amazing carnival-esque rides there, such as like I like to call a Superman, but they call a Sky Coaster, where you are pulled up all the way up to the top, and you have to cut your own rope, and you fly down and swing against like the concrete. You almost like hit it. If that's what you seem like, and it has the second tallest one in America. I think in the world actually. And they have a different like a slingshot ride and like these really extreme rides that aren't really roller coasters or thrill rides, but more of like personal experience rides that you would find at your carnival or your local state fair. And it's kind of safer to go here because they don't move their rides, or and they're held up to the same safety expectations as the major theme parks are. So it's definitely a safer place to enjoy those extreme rides, because I bet we've all seen the videos of slingshot rides getting broke and people not having fun on them. So moving on to the east coast of Florida, where I'm actually from, Tampa, we have a lot of actually places to go to. First is now known as Legoland, but it's actually before known as Cypress Gardens, which was a like beautiful botanical gardens that sat on this Lake Erosi right here. I can't Elosi, can't really say that. Um, but they're really well known for this Florida-shaped pool that was seen in like postcards throughout the late 20th century. and it was very famous. Now it actually sits run down. It's still there in the park, but sits run down and not really used. But they're really known for these ski aquatic shows. Many top water skiers came from this area, and they still do the performances, the ski performances today, except they're actually in Lego costumes now. So I personally haven't been to Legoland, but I know that I remember going to Cypress Gardens as a kid and seeing some stuff there. But I'm glad that Legoland came in because now it's added some more like a theme park thrill type of attraction where it was just kind of little water skiing and Lakeland. So it's a people are happy that Legoland came in. But moving on to the East Coast, actually going back to the coast, Lakeland was more towards Orlando, but I wanted to kind of include that because we're like heading over to the East Coast. Sits Weeki Wachee and Homosassa and Crystal River. Now, all three of these are freshwater springs, but they all do different kind of things. For start, Weeki Wachee uses their freshwater spring as more of like a water park. So they have these slides over here and kind of a beach. And then over here in this corner, actually, it's really hard to explain, you have a mermaid show where these live performers get under the water here and have breathing tanks. Not full of breathing, but they have like breathing pipes that they can use, and they do underwater like acrobatics dressed up as mermaids. It's pretty cool, and they like breathe through these little tunnels underwater, and then you sit underneath the water and watch them underneath the water. It was very cool area to kind of go to. It's very a local like watering hole for the tourists, I feel, or for locals. So, but definitely a great place to have a picnic and chill out. But moving up to Homosassa and Crystal River, I actually spend most of my Thanksgiving breaks in Homosassa to play with these manatees here. They come out from the ocean and swim up to the springs, like to where the actual water rises out, and feed and breed. And you're actually in certain locations allowed to swim with them, and they're very friendly, as much as they almost can seem like they can eat you. But yeah, they're awesome sea cows. So I think the water is so clear, but obviously freezing. It's freshwater, spring water, so that's the only downside to it. But moving on to the greater Tampa Bay area, where I'm actually from, you will find the best East Coast beaches or West Coast beaches and some beautiful sunsets. But we're moving on to Tarpon Springs. Tarpon Springs was founded, one of the first cities founded in Florida, as it was like the #1 area for sponges. And then as kind of we've grown and had synthetic sponges created, we don't really need them. But these are the natural sponges right here that minis used back in the day. And now it kind of sits as a like cultural center for Greek society, because a lot of Greeks migrated and founded the city to produce the sponges. So they now, like, thousands of Greek restaurants. It's a huge culture hub, and I love going up there. And obviously there's plenty of sponges for tourists to buy, and I honestly used one of the sponges for a year because it was soft. So it's definitely a great place to go. Moving on to Clearwater and St. Pete, we have the famous John Pass. Very few tourists actually go to Johns Pass. They sort of sit around Clearwater and don't really migrate down south to Johns Pass. But I personally say is the best local restaurants, as they're not really chains. They're more of like the really local fish spots to get a grouper sandwich. And it's the easiest place to catch the sunset, because you drive in, you can park right there. It's free parking. You walk out to the pier, you see a sunset, you go back. My dad actually lives down here, and that's what he does almost every day. He drives down to Johns Pass, walks out, and catches the sun. So moving on, head down south is Anna Maria Island. Actually, a lot of my friends have houses, or they they go to Anna Maria often because it's very little touristy. They say it has the most beautiful beaches. I've actually not been. I've only been once. As a really kid, I don't really remember it. I just remember getting a lot of sand dollars, but it's super beautiful and quaint according to people, and it's not really super touristy. So people go there just to kind of relax and get away from Clearwater, and the hustle bustle of St. Pete and all that. So moving on to the south and near Miami, we have Jupiter, which I actually have some family that live up in there. And they have these blowing glass rocks preserves that actually create some pretty big waves. Still not as big as anything in California, but these rocks provide they create these great waves, and it's very interesting just to see how they form over time and how it rises with the tide. You'll see more as the tide goes out. You'll see less as the tide goes in, and it's very interesting to see, because we really, our Florida isn't really known for its rocky coast. This is the only area that really has these limestoney rocks coming out of the ground, which is very interesting. Now going South Miami. Growing up, my family wasn't super of a fan of Miami, and still even to this day. So I've only been to Miami a couple times, and I actually have not been to the Coral Castle, but I saw many websites suggesting the Coral Castle, and it's made out of this stuff that I will explain probably later what's in St. Augustine. But it's made out of this like coral coquina stuff that is super strong and durable, and I'll explain more about later. But it's I've heard great reviews to where it's like a sculpture and great art museum. There's not too much hidden gems in Miami, so I kind of wanted to include one at least. But that's where I found out. Now, as you go west of Miami, you'll go right into the Everglades, and this road right here, it's called Alligator Alley, and it's definitely actually JK. This 275 road is called Alligator Alley. That's my bad. But down here in this whole area, you can't really stay anywhere. There's not really, like, you can see this airport here, but there's not really hotels, gas stations, or super common things on this road. So you kind of have to take a day trip in from Miami. But what you'll find to do here is airboat rides. And I've done a couple growing up, and they are amazing. You get super close to these alligators. The people driving you will sometimes feed them. And I mean, they could almost jump and bite you, but they don't. They're pretty friendly animals, surprisingly, for how big they are. But definitely a must do. You know, these airboats can literally ride on top of this grass. Like, they can do, they're basically cars without wheels, in my opinion. So, but definitely a great experience to do if you have a day in the Everglades. Now moving up all the way up to the north in the Panhandle, sits Pensacola right next to Alabama, and these three little spots. So between Alabama and Florida sits the Flora-Bama restaurant. I just went up here a year ago for a music festival. Not actually at the restaurant, but around the restaurant. And I remember seeing this, and this place was always popping. It's definitely a local spot, but also a tourist spot. The locals love it as it's like this meeting ground between these two states. And they share a lot in comments. As I zoom in here, I think I zoom in a little bit later, you can see how many cities rival each other. And we actually had to stay on the Florida side because we weren't allowed to rent an Airbnb on the Alabama side. So there's different laws that even jeopardized it there. So yeah, moving on. Here is the Flora-Bama with a music festival going on. I didn't go to their music festival, but it looked like this, and it's right on the beach. You're in the sand. It's definitely a completely different experience if you've been to other music festivals where you're, standing on concrete in the hot in the sun. This, you have the water, you have the beach. It's definitely a more tropical vibe going on. It's awesome. But moving up to the northeast, I actually have not been to these two places, and I was very surprised that they even existed because, Florida's not really known for its mountainous conditions, but it actually has an amazing waterfall that shoots all the way down into this hole. I couldn't really get that in the picture. But it's Florida's largest waterfall, and it's a great place to, hike and I heard hike and have a picnic. So many websites recommended it to me. And right next door to it is the Florida Caverns State Park, and I really want to go here because I've never really actually been in a cave to see stalagmites, and that's on my bucket list. So I was very surprised that we even had a cave in Florida, but it can be all lit up, and it's all in the north of the Panhandle. So they're definitely on my list of places to visit. Now moving over to my personal probably favorite city in Florida is St. Augustine. It is the oldest city in the United States because it was first established by the Spanish in 1565. Remember, Florida was owned by Spain up until, the 1600s? When did we buy? I don't know when we bought Spain, but a pretty long time. But then technically, as it came into America, this was the oldest founded city because this is what the Spanish actually stayed. I know they had a couple different colonies around Florida, but this was actually their first founded colony in Florida, creating it to be the oldest city in America. And it has, if you there's a bunch of cities that I like to describe it like it, such as Savannah, Georgia, and these different southern cities that I've been to as a child growing up to. It really gives you that southern historic like feel that you really don't get. You only get in these couple of towns in the south. But the first place is this fort, and this is actually made out of, I think, the same stuff with the Coral Museum. This coquina shells. I should did I say that? Yeah, right, coquina shells. Yeah, which is super strong and durable. And actually, I remember going to a kid, you were allowed to touch everything or whatever. But now, as it's growing up, they don't. They want people to touch the fort less because our enzymes are actually destroying it. But it's sat here for over 500 or about 500 years now. It was built around the 1600s, right when the city was founded, and it's the oldest fort in America and one of the oldest buildings in America. Um, and it's still sitting here. They shoot live fire. They shoot fake cannons every, I think, hour or so, and it's definitely St. Augustine's like high point. Now moving over, right next to the fort sits the old schoolhouse, and it's the oldest wooden schoolhouse in, I think, probably America. I can't say the world, but in America, the oldest schoolhouse. You can go inside. You can see there's a kid in the corner with a dunce cap hat on, and there's I think a fake animatronic teacher that like pretends to teach, and you sit there and see how it was to get an education back then. And this sits on a historical street in St. Augustine, which a bunch of historical places to visit, shops and such. That this is like a must-do city if you love history or if you love that southern kind of feel. It's a great city that doesn't get talked about a lot because it's, you know, up in the north and away from all the tourist stuff. So, but definitely, I could live in St. Augustine personally. But yeah, and that is it. I did all my citations. I only had used 4 websites, and for the most part, I knew what I was talking about. I used these websites to kind of like look at and be like, okay, people like that too. And like where I would see WikiWatchy, I would see Crystal River and Homosassa Springs. I was like, okay, yeah, I did do that as a kid. That like this is a good spot. So there's only I've told you there's 3 that I really haven't been to, but for the most part, I looked on these websites, kind of ignored the beaches because everybody goes to the beaches. I ignored all the beaches and did the more different spots, and I kind of found these spots that I thought weren't super touristy and that I've been to and could explain about. So yeah, here's the 3 websites I used, and then I have all the picture links shown right here, all in order as shown. And yeah, feel free to send this video to anyone or link it to anyone if they want to, you know, are looking at places in Florida to go that isn't a theme park or such. Or share this project to anyone. I really don't care. I actually like doing this project a lot. It was very interesting as to see where I've been as a kid, and you know, see what other people like to do the same way. So thanks for watching, and you know, email me if you have any questions. Thank you.